Hi, Heather. Yeah, thank you very much for your question. It's an incredibly important one, and I'm glad that you asked it because I think it's one of the ones that the candidates in this campaign really should be taking head on and giving a clear and honest answer to. And that's why I'm recording a video, because it's not something that I could quickly type a few words in a Facebook comment and really satisfy what I want to say and what you want to hear. So it's a complex issue, and I'm going to provide a fairly long and detailed answer here because I want to give it the treatment that it deserves. So first of all, yeah, I'm not a fan of vetoes. And the reason is that if you look historically at the use of vetoes and the groups that have used it, and this also goes to executive orders, they've often been used, in my opinion, quite inappropriately. They've been used more as a political weapon rather than a tool for collaboration. And I think we have enough conflict in our region right now, and we don't need to intensify it. I think we need to resolve it. And a different approach is being called for, I think, here, rather than utilization of vetoes, which are just going to intensify the conflict. You know, I think of organizations like the UN Security Council or the United States President and other political organizations that typically the veto is being used when they just have basically given up on resolution and want to basically use authority to force decisions through. And really often those decisions, in my opinion, haven't been particularly good ones, and not ones that really were for the benefit of people, but more a show of power. So that doesn't mean that I don't believe that through the concept of free and prior informed consent, different groups and indigenous nations shouldn't have a very significant amount of power to influence whether or not projects take place on their territories and what those projects look like. My feeling is that what we need to do to satisfy this engagement with indigenous peoples is that we have to take a different approach. And historically, our governments here in BC have always been very reactive. And so basically, they sit around and they hem and they haw and they say things, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's a project on our plate. And they have this knee-jerk reaction under the pressure of corporate interests, under the pressure of politics and other governments, sometimes under the pressure of different stakeholder groups. And inevitably, they often do things really poorly, and they make really poor decisions. And I think we're looking at one example of that right now with Coastal GasLink, where really, I'm not opposed to natural gas. I think environmentally there's a sound case for it to be a bridge fuel to be used throughout the world. And I'm not opposed to pipelines. I've actually worked in the industry and I've built pipelines, and I know that as a civilization we use a lot of energy, and really even in the Stikine region, I'll talk about this a bit more later, but we're pretty outsized consumers of energy products. So there's a responsibility there. However, again, through that knee-jerk reaction, we've really gone about this very poorly, and we've treated, obviously, the Wet'suwet'en and the Gitumden clan, and it's been really a travesty, and it's been tragic to watch some of the things that have happened, and I think they were avoidable. And for me, I can tell you that I was sitting at home feeling extremely frustrated that there were these secretive discussions and negotiations that were supposedly taking place that were obviously very unsuccessful. And as someone with experience both in the industry and in government, I felt that many people that may have had some better ideas or approaches were totally shut out of the process, and I don't think that the people that were in the process were doing very well at it. So my proposal is to move forward, that we have to get ahead of the game. We have to be proactive, and that may seem optimistic, But if you look at the Stikine region, we have a pretty good idea of what can take place here, what pressures might happen from other corporate interests, and what potential activities that we could be moving forward with. I think there's a real opportunity to get ahead of the curve and start to plan and start to get together transparently with everyone having an opportunity to watch what's going on and have a very open conversation, inviting people into it. That has to start with the indigenous groups who have the land, the rights and title to the land base as has been established in law. And that is where free and prior informed consent comes in, is that if we're wanting to do activities on the territories, the first people at the table and in that discussion have to be the First Nations and the indigenous groups. And I see that as an opportunity. I mean, people who are threatened by that, I just look at it and I go, well, you know, look at what's happened so far. I just don't see that what has taken place has been a great success. And I feel absolutely no threat in handing over the reins to indigenous groups in our region to lead the discussion. But again, it needs to be a discussion. It can't be a veto or a battle between different house groups or clans or bands or nations. We have to be collaborative in this, and that is going to include also business interests in the government and even just everyday citizens. Because you know what? Some of the best ideas out there are from, you know, Harry and Jane down the street that just never had a chance before to speak up, and we need to give them a chance for their voice to be heard. Now, there are different projects, and I think that means there's different stakeholder groups in different jurisdictions. And when we talk about Coastal GasLink, that's a project that stretches all the way from the Alberta border and where the extraction is taking place, and it goes all the way through many, many territories, all the way out to the coast, and then from the coast there's shipping that's going to again go through more territories. And I think, you know, one of the things that we have to look at with a project like that is that there are a lot of different stakeholders there. And again, you know, the word veto kind of, you know, it's just a recipe for conflict and more unrest, because we need to take a more progressive, problem-solving and democratic approach to large projects like this. I think the objective is that we need to try and do things so that we can all look in the mirror and at the end of the day say that what we did was something that was a benefit, not just to ourselves in the present day or to corporate interests, to the government, but really also beneficial in the long run and for our children and our grandchildren and the territory that we live on. And yes, that can be done with industrial projects. I know it can. But we have to work a lot harder at the planning and the execution of how we're going to do that. So, you know, as a different example, however, if you're looking at a project like Telkwa Coal, you know, Telkwa Coal, while it does have some impacts in different parts of the region, obviously they'd be shipping it by rail and out to the coast. Those impacts are not nearly the same as the really significant impacts on the territory of the Gidimt'en clan of the Wet'suwet'en people. And so obviously, first and foremost, the people at the table have to be the leadership of the Gidimt'en clan of the Wet'suwet'en people and the office of the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs. And yeah, I believe that we can have a collaborative approach still on projects like this. But certainly the company has more work to do, and the government has more work to do to make sure that, again, they first and foremost, and as well as the rest of us, can look in the mirror at the end of the day and say that we did the right thing. Now, in terms of resource extraction, I want to be clear. I'm not about NIMBYism. I'm not a not in my backyard person. And the reason is we in the Northwest, in the Stikine, globally, are outsized consumers. And what I mean by that is on a per capita basis throughout the world, we are near the top in terms of consumption levels. And so because of that, I believe that we have a global obligation to participate in the resource extraction economy. If we consume so much, it's just simply not fair for us on a ethical and moral level to say, yeah, we're going to consume all this, but we don't want any of this happening in our backyards. Because, you know, and I've had some discussions about this with some people that I really respect a lot, and I respect their point of view, and they say, you know, you have to start somewhere. Somebody has to defend what they have. Well, we have a really unfair advantage compared to other places. I shouldn't say an unfair advantage, it's a fair advantage, but it is an advantage. Whereas other places are really at what I should say is an unfair disadvantage in protecting their territory. So what that means is, if Asia wants natural gas because they want to shift off of coal, which again, I believe globally is something that at this point I can support as a transition fuel, they're going to get it from somewhere. And if they don't get it from us here, where we can do that and potentially do that development in a way that we can all look in the mirror and feel good about ourselves, they're going to get it from Russia. And we know how Russia deals with projects like this. Or they're going to get it from Africa, probably even more impactful on the residents there that have already been, you know, in many ways dehumanized and put under incredible strain. They might get it from Venezuela. They might get it from North Korea. I don't know. But there are a lot of places in the world that do this kind of work much more poorly environmentally and in terms of human rights than Canada can. Now, I'm not going to say Canada does, because obviously when we're removing Indigenous peoples at gunpoints in the year 2019, 2020, we got some big problems here still. But again, I think that we need to resolve our problems and not just say, not in my backyard. So again, I think we need to get away from the conflict, get away from the vetoes, and start getting ahead of the game, looking at the big picture from 30,000 feet, and start getting everybody together and being transparent, having this discussion, and thinking about the future and planning for what we want to do. And again, a huge part of that is not resource extraction. A huge part of that is planning for what we want our future to look like, including economic diversification, including really building that sustainable, resilient economy, getting knowledge economy up here, getting investment in secondary and tertiary manufacturing, and, you know, really exploiting the opportunities that we have here that we can do without devastating our region and having this conflict all the time. So there's a very long answer. Hope you can stick around for 13 minutes to watch it. But again, great question. And hopefully that gives a pretty clear idea of where I stand and what I'll be working on with this issue if I'm elected on October 24th. So thanks again, Heather. Bye.